me working.
Yes. So
And
tell me a little bit about your outfit first.
tell
Because
you
I
a
like
little bit about my
I like the
outfit.
shoes. I like the shoes, by the way.
Oh, the little
yes.
box?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think I could pull it off like you do. But
Well, you
but
could.
tell me, how do you get this outfit together first? Let's start there.
Well, you start with a color. So here in this order,
Yeah.
Every sister is associated with a color, and mine, of course, is pink.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
wanted to do something a little summery because it's
It is hot.
daytime and it's hot outside, and I had no idea what the air conditioning was going to be like in here. So, wanted to be a little cool, but. Yeah, I wouldn't say that we're drag queens, though.
Would be the proper word to describe it?
We are 21st century queer nuns.
I like that. Okay,
Yes.
I like that. Okay, okay. So queer nun. I want to get that right.
So what I would differentiate
Yes.
between drag queens and
Sure.
what the sisters are is drag is kind of a performance,
Right.
whereas we are more, fundraising, community support,
Okay.
taking care of,
Gotcha.
different things within our community.
Sin
So
City Sisters, do they do any book readings? Do they do any activities?
we haven't.
Do you do any
We have
activities with
talked about-
kids? Any
We do,
charity
actually,
events? So
yeah,
tell me
we're,
about that.
So Monday, we're with Las Vegas Pride.
Mhm.
They have a LGBT skate night, Pride skate night,
Mm-hmm.
at Crystal Palace. I think it's Crystal
Sure,
Palace.
sure.
Is that on Rancho?
Yep.
Yeah. It's at Crystal Palace, and it's very kid friendly. So all families of
And anybody's invited, right? Doesn't matter what
Everybody
your sexuality
doesn't
is.
matter.
Doesn't matter what your age is.
no
Anybody can come
anybody
and
can
have a
come.
good time.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to talk to you about. Whether you're a drag queen, whatever the case may be, if you're a man that dresses in female clothing, I hate to use that term, or if you're a woman who dresses in male clothing, whatever. People put labels on everything, which I don't like.
Drag.
Yeah. In general, you know what I'm talking about. There are people out there in society, luckily not the majority, but there are people out there in society that think you being anywhere near children, bad, bad, bad. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, obviously, I disagree with that. When you hear politicians talk like that, I would imagine that must upset you, but what goes through your mind when you hear people put a negative on the things that, for example, the Sin City Sisters do? What goes through your mind?
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. I think right now we're in a really polarized country, society, but I honestly feel like what's going on right now with all of the targeting of the LGBTQ community, Florida, and in the U.S., but mainly Florida going on right now. I really think it's just they kind of know the gig's up, the Republican Party. They know that their time is coming to an end, and they're trying anything they can to keep hold of just that little bit of power. And it's failing. Like, look what happened yesterday in Ohio with
Right.
they wanted to change the rules midstream, and the residents said, nope.
You're not doing it, including
not doing
Republicans, by the way. Not just
including
Democrats.
Republican, right.
And some of this stuff is happening in large Republican areas where they're
Right.
still not winning.
And I would say that so to go back, I don't think that necessarily all Republicans as a whole
No.
feel like the gig is up. I think that the extreme right Republicans that have really kind of come to the forefront of hatred and bigotry over the last 6 years.
And you know what's interesting, Sister Aura, is when people use the term weird, okay? What's weird to one person might not be weird to somebody else.
Right.
People consider me weird for some of the things that I do and some of my habits. You probably consider other people might be a little weird or strange with their behaviors. But a good person is not going to treat them differently. A good person is going to respect them so long as they're not breaking the law, which clearly your group is not doing.
Correct.
That's what frustrates me. It's like, okay, you might not be like me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lie and say that you're indoctrinating our kids. Or like if you're transgender and somehow you go into a bathroom that says men or woman, that means if you're transgender, you have a better chance of molesting a child, which, by the way, is also not true.
Correct.
I just feel like you said it yourself. There's so much misinformation, right?
Well, misinformation, but also ignorance.
Right.
I mean, honestly, if any of what they were doing, and by they, I mean the extreme right, if any of what they were doing was for the safety of children, they wouldn't let them go to church, right?
It's a very valid point you bring up. And just like we talk about all Republicans, obviously I'm not going to sit here and say all people who work in churches are bad, but
No.
if you look at all the, and there are quite a few, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, of priests and people that work in churches that have molested kids, and by the way, they've thrown that under the rug in many of these cases we don't hear
Right.
about until years and decades later. You are 100% correct. I agree with you.
Well, what's funny about the whole drag show thing is most drag shows are at night, and
Right.
my whole thought is, why are you taking your children into a gay bar at night? Like it's like if you don't want to see if you don't want your
Right.
children to see a drag show,
Right.
don't take them to a gay bar at night.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
So it's not like we're invading,
Right.
mainstream heterosexual establishments and putting on drag shows.
Let me ask you another question about drag queens that maybe is a misconception. I'm not extremely educated on this, but when people use the term drag queen, they assume that that person must be gay. And I know that there are some people that are drag queens that are not gay, that are straight. That's another misconception, right?
Yes, I think that it's not the majority
Right.
or even,
Right.
50-50 by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, there are heterosexual drag queens. There's also heterosexual females that
Right.
that do
Right.
drag performances.
And I went to this drag queen reading or drag queen performance where I met you. And as I said to start the segment, everybody was having a good time. There was
It was
nothing
good.
sexual, nothing sexualized. The only message that I heard was be happy with who you are. Let's treat everybody with respect. Oh, my God, what a terrible message to send
know.
to children, right? Oh, my
Right.
gosh. Like,
Let's give them more fire drills or
Yeah.
what do they call it? The active shooter drills. Let's give them more of those because
Yeah.
that's definitely keeping them safe.
yeah, that's definitely working. Where does this come from? Why are there so many people on the far right that in focusing now on drag queens reading books to kids that say that drag queens are indoctrinating kids? Where is that coming from? I haven't seen one video of a drag queen reader that was saying things that were beyond inappropriate to kids. Like, where does this come from?
I have no idea. I wish I do.
Yeah.
I think it just comes from fear of, we're in a society right now that is completely in flux. Like we just came out of a pandemic, people weren't working, and now they had to latch on to something to feel like little bit of control that they might have, and transgenders was in the news a lot, so that became their main focus. Heaven forbid a transgender woman use the female bathroom. Like you wouldn't be equally as weirded out if she came into the men's room.
I just go in there and to do my business.
Right.
And I leave. And I'm not looking around, oh, is that person a transgender? Are they looking at me? No, I go in there and I do my business and I leave. And the idea that they're going in there, listen, I also understand the other argument, which is, if a 16 or 17-year-old boy claims that he is a woman, probably shouldn't be showering with 16, 17, 18-year-old girls. I do think there's a line there that you shouldn't cross. But if you've had the full transgender surgery, I'd say you're pretty committed, and you're not doing that so you can go into a bathroom to look at naked women. I mean, there's a line that you probably shouldn't cross. Like, I want to get your take on this. And I've been pretty outspoken about this, too. While I am pro-LGBTQ friendly, anybody who knows me knows that. I think anybody should be a transgender if that's what they want, as long as there's a parent, a guardian that agrees with it, and then you've gone through the process. I have no problem with that. But here's what I do have a problem with. Transgender women competing with other women on the playing field. I don't like that. I think it's unfair. Now, that's my opinion. I want to know what your opinion is on that.
Well, honestly, I don't really have one. I mean, I do see the argument that that it isn't, fair because of, male body versus female body. However, I don't know what all of the hormones that they take, how that changes their physiology. That would probably be better addressed to somebody who's gone through
Right.
Transition, because they very well may be on the same playing field once they've gone through the full, because they're kind of loaded full of estrogen, right, and female hormones to change their body to be female. So yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I would guess that they're probably not as physically, I don't know how to say this. I would doubt that they have the physical makeup of the male body that once they've gone through a
I think it's
transition.
probably a case-by-case basis. I
Yeah.
think it depends. Like the first person I think of is a swimmer named Leah Thomas, who as a man was 440th in the country as a male swimmer in college. Didn't get the transgender surgery, but identified as a woman. And by the way, I don't care. I'll call you a woman or a man, and I'll be respectful,
Right.
regardless of what my personal beliefs are. I'm not going to, I'm going to treat people with respect. But then she's number one in the country as a woman. And I say to myself, you don't go from 440 to 1 just from working hard in the off season.
That's true.
But I agree with what you said also, in that, in some cases, maybe it's not an advantage. I think it's a case-by-case basis. So there has to be some sort of fair guidelines put in place,
Right.
I think. For obviously what Leah Thomas is doing, in my opinion, is wrong. If you're just joining us, Sister Aura in studio from Sin City Sisters. What would be your message to some Republicans out there and people on the right? Because that's where most of this hate is coming from, let's be honest.
Yeah.
That would say, you're indoctrinating kids. I don't want you around children. What would be your response to that?
Grow up. Calm down. Taylor Swift, you need to calm down. Take it down a notch. Like, there's zero proof that is happening. Like, that's always cracked me up when they're like, oh, you want to groom children. It's like, my generation, Gen X, we tried everything possible to not be gay. Right? It wasn't accepted then. We had hid who we were. And when people would start throwing around like, this is your choice, it was like, you're fucking kidding me. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Can I
You're
say
effing kidding me. Yeah.
You're effing kidding me.
Yeah.
Why would I choose to be bullied at school? Why would I choose to be ostracized in society? Why would I choose? Now, this generation has it a little easier, but that's kind of where now the bullies are in Congress instead of in the school. The schools are pretty much open-minded. It's the bullies in Congress who are trying to ban everything and say that there was good things about being a slave and bad things about.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
You bring up a very good point, Sister Aura, and I want to talk about this because some people that I talk to that are ignorant, and I talk to these people every day. Don't ask me why.
I know. I've seen your show.
Oh yeah, you see me get red in the face all the time.
I was kind of worried coming in today. I was like, are we gonna have any callers?
No.
'Cause
We'll stay away from that. But it's interesting because I have conversations with ignorant people that say, why are there so many transgenders today? Why are there so many people coming out as gay today? Why are there so many drag queens today? And my response is to what you said, which is 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago and beyond, people weren't as comfortable as being able to come out and be who they are because there were so many people that would attack them for their sexuality or who they want to be. Now, there are still some of those people today, but luckily not as many, and it's more accepted. And I say, there were always people who were gay. There were always men who wanted to dress in female clothing, but the reason why many of them didn't do it is because of people like you who judged them and made them feel bad and made them feel different. You agree with that?
I think that there's a lot of truth in that. I don't think that there's any more or less LGBT people on the planet right now. I think that it's just that
But they're more comfortable in being able
they're
to be
more
who they are.
comfortable
Right,
with
right.
being who they are and living their truth.
Right.
And everybody should have the right to live their truth. And my whole thing with rights is like, okay, if you don't agree with dressing up in women's clothing, don't dress up in women's clothing.
Exactly.
Like, how is that difficult? Like, if you don't agree with marrying a person of the same sex, don't marry somebody of the same sex. Like, but your belief in that shouldn't dictate my rights to live an authentic life.
Could not agree with you more. Like, if you walked into a church dressed like the way you're dressed, do you think there are some churches that would kick you out?
Oh, yes.
They would.
Yes.
How Christian of them, right?
Yes.
How Christian of them.
Well, I don't know that they would kick me out. They would probably ask me what I was doing there, because they would think that I was probably not there on the best of intentions. And if I was dressed like this, they might be correct. Like, it would just, I mean, we probably
they would think that it would
wouldn't
be a
go-
distraction.
They would think it would be a distraction, but they would also wonder why I was there.
Have you ever
because-
had interactions like that where you've gone to events or gone to different places where you've been the victim of discrimination because of the way you were dressed?
Because of the way I was dressed? Well, they tried, but
Where did that happen?
oh, I used to do drag like many, many, many years ago, and going into Denny's after the bars closed, and which I know doesn't happen here, but
Well, let's talk about that. You go into
and people making snide comments, and I never let it bother me. But
so you're out having a good time with your friends. You go to a bar, having a couple drinks. Maybe you're off the next day, just like anybody else. You want to go out, hang out with your friends, having a good time, and then you want to get something to eat. And you go with your friends to Denny's, and who knows, maybe you're dressed like this, who knows. So people will actually come up to you. See, because I don't know what that feels like. And I can't imagine. You seem like you take it well, but it just sounds so horrible to me, that you would have to deal with something like that.
Well, we're pretty good. Well, back when that was kind of going on, we know what places we can congregate in and what places
are more friendly.
Yeah. So, these were places that the gay community often went to after the bars closed. So the establishment knew that was their clientele, and we felt relatively safe. But there was, once in a while, people who would be in there that were, kind of rude and homophobic, and
So they would just go up to like a gay slur or something like that. Just say
faggot.
something. Oh, it's just awful. Listen, there's a word for that. They're called bigots.
Yeah.
That's what they are. They are bigots. And by the way, the people that are so, in my opinion, you can tell me whether you disagree or not. I find the people in this country that are so anti-gay, right? And they talk about how being gay is such a sin. Sometimes are the people that are afraid to come out of the closet themselves.
Well, so that was my point before when you were like,
Yeah.
are there more of you now than there used to be? Because, and it's like, no, I just think that people are more comfortable. Like, I mean, there's a lot of closeted people out there, still a lot of closeted people out there. But now with it more and more being accepted in mainstream, and again, that's not in every corner of the United States. It's still very dangerous in some places. But for the most part, it's accepted by mainstream America. That's why the majority of voters today are, kind of backing. It's kind of funny because 10, 20 years ago, I would have never heard a newscaster on a mainstream news network say, it's awful what the right is doing to these children who just want to express them. Like that would have never came out of somebody's mouth on MSNBC or NBC or CBS but I'm like, wow, how things have changed, that now you're like, this is just sad that they won't let these kids be who they want to be.
Yeah,
And I'm like, so I feel like we have more people on our side than we have
and I'm
not on our side.
And I'm certainly one of them, and I call out hatred and bigotry whenever I see it. It's
and
disgusting.
that's the thing. Like, people need to step up and call it out when they hear it. Not just LGBT, anything.
Across the board, racism,
Racism,
100%.
bigot-
Anti-Semitism.
Exactly. If you're at Thanksgiving dinner and your
Yeah.
asshole relatives are
Yeah.
making like
Call 'em
stupid
out.
jokes,
Call 'em out.
call them out.
All right, I got to ask you a loaded question now. I don't know what your answer is going to be because I don't know what your political affiliation is, but what do you make of Donald Trump? I have to ask you.
You said it was going to be Ron DeSantis.
I could ask you about Ron DeSantis too
What
because
do
he's
I
definitely
think
not
of Donald Trump? I don't think we have enough time. I think he is. I think he's a washed-up television personality. I think he is probably the most narcissistic person I've ever heard. And I don't know if he even believes the stuff that comes out of his. I don't even know if he believes it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he says it because he knows that it gets a reaction.
Yeah.
And I think that he uses it because he knows it'll get him where he wants to go.
You're probably right. I bring up Ron DeSantis because I think if Ron DeSantis was the president, which I don't think he will be, he's more dangerous even than Donald Trump. I think he's a dictator. Certainly, his entire platform is going after the LGBTQ community and going after people like you. It seems to be his entire platform these days.
Yes. I would say yes, and I don't know that he's more dangerous than Trump. And this is my own personal
They're
opinion.
both dangerous, yeah.
The only reason I say that is I have not heard, I know he acts this way, but I have not heard Ron DeSantis, praise Putin or praise Kim Jong-un or, I think Trump wants to be a Putin or a Kim Jong-un. It's like before Trump, it was like, oh my God, Bush, right? Now I'm like, wait, okay, so Bush wasn't that. At least I never feared for the safety of our country.
Right.
I never feared that he was good. Can you imagine Bush ever saying that Putin is a nice guy?
No, or writing love letters to Kim Jong-un.
Right.
I tell you, you're right. Trump makes
it would have never happened.
Trump makes Bush look like a sweetheart, and I was far from
Right.
a Bush. I think Bush Sr. had a little bit more class, but
I think
Yeah.
DeSantis's policies are probably more dangerous.
like the Don't Say Gay bill and what
Yeah.
he did with Disney.
But
yeah.
I don't know that. I don't think I wouldn't be worried that we would be a communist country with DeSantis.
Sure.
That's not to say that I think that it would be a rosy 4 years. It would be miserable, but
Right.
yeah. But I do have a fear of Trump getting back in office because, I mean, look what he did before. He's going to be off the charts if he gets reelected.
Yeah.
I don't think he will, but I
Neither
don't
do
I don't put anything past American people.
Neither do I. Let me ask you a little bit about, and even though, I assume you're not transgender.
No.
I'm making that assumption.
But I am non-binary.
Got you. Okay. All right. So you're a good person to ask this question then. Another big controversy in this country, and I don't think it should be, but it's about kids that some people on the right say are being indoctrinated and having transgender surgery. They use the term mutilation. I don't use that term. My personal belief is that if a kid, whether 8 years old or 17 years old, wants to be a transgender, as long as it goes through their family, guardians, and then they speak to multiple doctors, maybe even psychologists, go through all the proper channels, then they should be allowed to have that surgery. That's my personal opinion. Now, there are a lot of people in this country that disagree with me on that. So I want to get your take on that. When do you think it's appropriate, and what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that everybody has a right to live the life that they want to live. I don't know what too young would look like, but I do know that to go through that process, they do have psychiatrists and they do have therapy and they do have. I mean, it's not just they woke up they woke up on Tuesday and went, "Mom, I think I want to be a girl," and on Wednesday they were getting a sex change. Like
Right.
it's a long process.
Correct.
And it involves doctors and therapists and psychiatrists and the parents. I think it's great that parents are even entertaining the idea of letting their children explore their sexuality.
Sure. If somebody said to you, Sister Aura, well, wait a second. If you're 16 years old or 12 years old, you can't buy alcohol. You can't drive a car. Why should you be allowed to get a sex change? What would be your response to that? That's an argument I hear from people on the far right.
Well, I would say, why shouldn't I be allowed to? Like, I can get pregnant.
Right. That's true. That's
I can
very
get
true.
somebody pregnant.
Right.
You can drive.
Mm-hmm.
At
If you're 16, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I would say, I mean, why is it bothering you so much? That's what I would say. Like,
They're not your kids.
mind your business.
Right.
Like, if they're making a mistake, they're making a mistake. Like,
By the way, a lot of people that I get into these arguments with don't even have kids. Which
right.
drives me
And
crazy.
I don't have kids, so I'm like,
Right, right.
now I can only speak for like me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
If I grew up in this era, in
Yeah.
this generation, I probably would be going through transgender.
Let me ask you
Because when I was, I knew that I was, I was telling people when they would ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Ever since I was 6, I want to be a girl.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. No,
So
you're
I
not
knew-
the first person to tell me that. You know?
I knew.
So why not now?
It's just a personal decision.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't have any gender dysmorphia. Like,
Right.
I don't hate my gender. I just
Gotcha.
don't identify with my gender.
Fair enough. So I talked to. So what? That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Like, so you knew when you were like 5 or 6 years old.
Oh my God. Yeah.
As a boy, you wanted to dress in female clothing,
Oh.
which, by the way, I see absolutely nothing wrong with at
I-
all.
The minute my mother left the house, I was in her
Yeah.
closet.
And there are a lot of people that don't understand that. Like, I talk to people actually who are gay people, openly gay, and I say, let me ask you, because I like to learn, right?
Right.
I like to ask people that are different than me, and I like to learn. I say to them, when did you know that you were gay? And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them tell me it was pre-puberty, that they knew, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, that they were not attracted to the opposite sex. And for you, you're saying you wanted to dress in female clothing when you were very young. Right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I was convinced that I was going to be a woman when I grew up. Like,
Right.
um,
And that's
I don't know where that came from, but
And there are a lot of people that want to say, "Oh, that's somebody who's mentally ill." Again, these are not my words. I don't talk like this, but I talk to people every day that think if you're transgender or if you're dressed in an outfit that, for example, you're dressed in, that person must be mentally ill. Talk to those people that make those statements that I believe are incorrect.
it doesn't affect you. Like, I mean, there's a lot of mental illness in society, but I don't think that it's rampant in the LGBT community. I think that it takes a lot of courage to live your authentic self, whether that's going through gender reassignment, or if that means being gay or lesbian, or if that means being bisexual. I think it takes a lot of courage to say, I don't care what you think.
Right.
I'm going to live my truth.
Sure.
I'm not here to live your truth.
The idea that, and I'm sure you've heard of this, where, there are Republicans out there like Mike Pence who believe that you shouldn't be allowed to serve in the military if you're transgender. I find that to be abhorrent and disgusting. What are your thoughts on that? You're a person that's willing to risk their life for the country. I'm not sure there's anything more patriotic.
I agree. And I think that, God love them. I don't know why they would want to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I couldn't tell him I was gay quick enough to get out of the Navy.
Yeah.
And that was before I was even out. I
Right,
knew
right,
that I
right.
knew that I had had sex with with men, and I knew that
Sure.
it would. And I was like, look, I'm gay. I can't be here.
Yeah, and you don't want to be treated differently. What do you make of the Mulvaney situation with Bud Light? What do you make of Mulvaney, and what do you make of the whole Bud Light situation?
I think it was amazing.
Yep.
I think she's amazing. I think that she is a role model to a lot of youth, whether they be, transgender youth, or whether they just be somebody who's being judged for who and what they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's been a great inspiration. And I'm a little jealous. I wish that there's no way. I did everything in my power to keep people from knowing I was gay when I was her age.
What is that like to, you know who you are,
Yeah.
but what is it like to have to keep that within yourself and, in a way, hide it from people in fear of the way people will react towards you? I can't imagine how difficult that must be, Sister Aura, to not be able to be who you are in fear of people's reactions. That has to be like hell. I can't understand how tough that must have been for you.
It's kind of like asking me what would it have been like to not have that. I don't know.
You've had to deal with it your whole
Right.
life. Right.
I don't know. I know that when I came out, I didn't let people treat me that way any longer.
Right.
Like I didn't accept gay slurs. I didn't accept being talked down to. I didn't tolerate any of that behavior. And because I didn't walk that way, I didn't get a lot of it. So
Well, that's good.
yeah. So
I tell
as
people-
an adult, I mean, because I came out when I was 19.
Right.
So,
If you don't mind me asking, are you married?
yes,
Oh, you are.
26 years.
To another man, I would imagine. Legal marriage?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Well, we've been together 26 years. Of course, we've been married. I know I'm going to get this
'Cause gay
wrong.
marriage
I
was
think
illegal.
It's 14 years.
Gotcha.
That it got 14 years.
And by the way, I have always been on the side of gay marriage should be the same as straight marriage.
My mother was married 7 times.
Was she really?
I felt
Oh
like
my
I should have at least gotten one stab at it.
7 marriages?
I've had one.
When you came out at 19, how did your family react to that?
Well, it was always just me and my mom, and
I don't know what that noise is. There's drilling somewhere. Go ahead. Don't let it bother you.
I thought we were being too loud or
Yeah,
something.
there's Ron DeSantis next door.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yay! Come over. Let's chat. Well, of course, she wasn't thrilled with the idea.
Mhm.
It was back in the 80s. right?
Sure.
So she wasn't thrilled with the idea, but then she ended up being very supportive, but she was a little hateful when I first came
But
out.
she's come around.
Well, she's passed, but
Oh, I'm sorry
she
to hear
did
that.
come around. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
No father in your life, or
Nope.
that's unfortunate. That
Yeah.
had to be difficult for you growing up, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
well, I had 4 of them.
Yeah, that sucks. That sucks. But I'm glad that your mother eventually came around and accepted
Oh,
you.
yeah.
That had to be very difficult. I want to give you an opportunity before we go, because this segment has gone pretty fast. We've talked about a lot of different issues. I want you to talk about Sin City Sisters. I want you to talk about this organization.
Uh-huh.
I want you to talk about the event that I believe you're having on Monday. We want to get as many people out there as possible to support what your group is doing, which I commend you for doing that.
Well, we're supporting their group,
Gotcha,
so it's not
gotcha,
our event. But,
gotcha.
So Sin City Sisters, actually, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence is a worldwide order, started in '87 in San Francisco.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, '78.
Oh, wow.
Dyslexia.
Long time ago.
78 in San Francisco, right before the AIDS epidemic, and that was really kind of what kind of blossomed the sisters into who we are now globally, because we were the first organization to come up with the safe sex pamphlet, and we actually coined the phrase safe sex. So that's and if anybody's wondering, that is a question in the original Trivial Pursuit. So if you get that question on the original game, it's the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence.
I like it.
So we started by doing safe sex outreach, and of course at that time, caring for a lot of people who were HIV positive, and so as it's blossomed around the world, each order kind of works within their community wherever the need arises. So it's usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, it's almost always LGBT focused, but they do things a little differently in different orders. Like San Francisco, for instance, they do events all year long, and then they have grants that people will apply for. The Sin City Sisters, we actually are kind of unique in the worldwide order. We have a nonprofit called SADAP, which is the Sisters AIDS Drug Assistance Program. So we help offset the cost of AIDS and HIV medication for people who are in either financial